started the podcast without the recording. This is something we should talk about, though. The American culture now, like, people don't talk, man.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you need to hire a therapist just because you don't have no one to talk to, about your issues, about important things, right?
Right.
So it was funny because I was a little bit of that when I was doing Uber. I was, I don't know, a therapist of some sort.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're all good. So.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's see.
Cool. Killer, man. Well,
Amor, how do I look? Do I look professional?
Yeah. Do you mind?
Business casual. You look good, man.
La barriga.
No tanto.
My belly.
Wait, do you mind like sitting like the way I am?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
way he can center himself.
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little more?
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
So that way if you want to
Cool.
scoot over just slightly, Mr. Molina.
Well, I guess we can get right into it. So, Mr. Molina, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and everything, and let's get to know you.
Start from the top.
From the top or
From
the bottom?
Yeah.
Or
So,
the bottom.
so I was gonna say. So, I think a good place to start is like where you're from and everything, and
Yes, absolutely. I am from many different places. I was born in Chile. When I was 7, I moved to Venezuela, and then I grew up in Venezuela. So even though both countries in South America, as you probably know, but very different culturally, like especially back in the 70s, right, late 70s. Chileans used to be very not very open to other cultures.
right.
In fact, this is probably a fun fact about Chileans back in the 70s. There were no people with African descent, like African race-wise people in Chile. So maybe because, we're like down in South America and there's not a whole lot of great things about Chile. And back then, we were in the middle of a dictatorship. So, that was not a cool destination to go visit, right,
Yeah.
and explore Chile.
Yeah.
None of that. I mean, it was a brutal military dictatorship.
Wow.
So anyways, you can say, in many ways, like a very closed society. And then we moved to Venezuela, which was the opposite, very open to the world. It was thriving economically back in the 70s, and as you probably know, it's a country that produces oil, and so you could, with an immense population, they're immigrants, an important part of the population right now. Well, it's a different story, but back in the 70s. There were many immigrants, and just because the country was thriving, it was prosperous. And so that was a cultural shock when we moved. And in Venezuela, they also have a different accent when we speak Spanish, right? So most Americans will think Spanish is the same across the board, like all Hispanic, countries, Spanish-speaking countries. It's just they're all the same, and we're not.
Because some came from different languages, right? Like some were Portuguese, some were
Yes.
Spanish, some were.
Yeah, and in every country have their own different traditions and music and food. So and so the accent, the way of speaking, it's very particular of every South American country. So I guess I'm saying this because I grew up in Venezuela. Years later, when I went back to Chile, to my country, right, in quotes, people ask me in Chile, hey, where are you from? And I'm like, that's a funny question. I'm from here. You speak so differently. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And
Can I ask a question too, real quick? So, is because Chile is like huge, right? It's like
Yes.
it's basically compromises like half the
South America,
half the
right.
South American coast. Like, is there a big difference between like North Chile and South, or?
Well, geographically, yes. In the north, it's more arid. There's more like just deserts, and so it's very different from the south. Like in the south, it's just basically ice because it's right there next to the South Pole. So the whole geography is different, and And Santiago, the capital, it's kind of like in the center.
Okay.
It's in the middle. So weather-wise, it's very beautiful and geographically also.
Is Santiago where you were?
Where I was born.
Okay, you
yes.
were born in Santiago.
Yeah, I was born in Santiago. Then when I was 7 years old, in 1979, and we moved to Venezuela. I was 7. And when I was 21, I moved to the States.
Gotcha.
So and then started my life as an immigrant.
What, can I ask what sparked the move to the United States from Venezuela?
Well, that is everybody's dream in South America, pretty much.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we grew up like that with the ideal of America, and you watch the movies and everything is so cool in the movies and everybody looks so happy. We're talking about old movies, right?
Right.
Because today's movies, they're quite depressing if you ask me. But back in the day, movies were fun, and so
goofy and like
goofy.
Yeah.
And,
They were higher quality back in the day too. Just overall, like the stories and everything.
right? Yeah. Movies now have become so political that there's always a political issue in today's movies, right?
There's like an agenda,
Right.
An agenda on every movie. Yeah.
So, but back then, movies were made to entertain people, to give people a good time, and honestly, they were quite realistic in many ways. So you grow up with that ideal. Wow, America, it's so great, it's so beautiful, and people have opportunities in America that we don't have in our countries, and so it's a very common dream, so to speak. So when I had the opportunity to come to America, well, I took it, and I don't regret it.
Just kind of freaks out a
Technical
little bit on the TV.
difficulties. Yeah.
Now we're
Hopefully
having
that's
a little
not the camera.
earthquake.
Hopefully that's not the camera.
Do we have it? Do we have it on our own camera too? Or is it
Yeah,
recording?
yeah.
Oh, okay, sweet. So we're-
Okay.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, so yeah, that was the reason. Yeah, so which is why there's a huge influx of immigrants right now in our country. Pretty much the word in our countries in South America is in Central America. It's borders are open in America, so just go right now. If you want to go to America, you want to live in America, the opportunity is now.
So it's like a known thing, like the word is down there and everything.
Oh
Like,
yes, totally.
yeah. Come on in. Yeah.
So we know this, which is why there's so many immigrants from South America, especially from Venezuela. Now there's a lot of people coming. They say most of the immigrants coming through the border now, they're from Venezuela, and for obvious reasons. Venezuela is doing terribly politically, economically. It's a mess. So
Now, is that even like coming through Mexico, or is that like?
well, they enter through Mexico, through the southern border. How they get to Mexico, that I don't know that exactly.
But there is a
They-
significant portion of Venezuelans that are.
You have to
just doing the whole walking from Venezuela to America.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
That's insane.
That's-
Like,
So-
talk about a hike, dude. Like from
Yes.
Venezuela to America.
And here's the perhaps contradiction or paradox. In America, there's so many people who are just so dissatisfied with America. They're so angry with the whole America idea, and we are such a terrible country, and with racism, and there's all kinds of stuff. Like the latest one was the when the Roe versus Wade was repealed by the Supreme Court. Now, wow, there's that have so many people angry at America.
Yeah.
We are such a terrible country, you would think, and yet people from other parts of the world would die to be here, and they're dying.
Literally
Yeah.
dying to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that got to make you think. Okay, so maybe what we have here, it's not that bad. Okay, it's not perfect. We get it, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I think we still have something great here in America.
Yeah. And
It's I don't know, an ideal I think we can still believe in.
right. And I guess like as an immigrant, does that kind of like ever irritate you when you compare your experience with people's experience here? I mean, everybody does have a different experience,
Oh, yeah.
but like when you see somebody maybe middle class and everything kind of complaining about like,
Oh,
America
gosh.
is a shit show and everything.
Right. Well, the whole systemic racism. I mean, people believe, or some people in America believe that they cannot succeed in America, that they don't have enough opportunities, or because they believe the whole system is rigged against them because of their skin color. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And gosh, I mean, system rigged against you and lack of opportunities. Well, consider the life of an immigrant in this country, and my life particularly, like most immigrants, right, who don't speak English. It's a real struggle. Like being in a country that you don't know, you cannot communicate, and you know the only thing you know is that you have opportunities here that you don't have back in your country. But it's really difficult. It's frustrating not being able to communicate. You go to a store and you cannot even say how much are the tomatoes or anything like that. It's really difficult. And but then what? You pay attention. You try to make friends who speak English. You watch television and you start picking up words and phrases, and you start practicing, and then you develop yourself and you practice. And then, well, my particular case, right, it went something like that. And I got to a point where I felt confident enough in my English skills to consider going to college. And I started reading books in English, which I, never did. And then I started doing that, and it got to a point where I could read a whole book in English without using a dictionary. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'm ready for college, so I'm gonna give it a shot. And I went to college, and long story short, I have a master's degree now, and that allows me to teach philosophy in college, which was always my dream. It was a struggle. It was not easy. Nobody gave me anything for free. And when I hear people complaining about the system being racist or whatever, I'm like, wow, you're telling me that you were born in America and you speak the language and you know the opportunities you have here, you know how the system works, and you're going to tell me that it's harder for you than it was for me?
Yeah.
Like, really? Try to go to a country where you don't understand their language and try to survive there.
Yeah.
And then you're going to feel like you have the whole world against you.
Right.
The other irony too, I think, is that some people just don't even like to ask the question of, is it just like, if you dislike it so much and you don't think there's enough opportunity, then just go somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
But they never do.
Yeah.
There's
Well, it's something to see too, is like there's an influx of people here. There's not an influx of us going
out.
somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Which should be indicative of something.
mhm.
But-
Absolutely. Yeah. Americans are not moving to Canada, as far as I know, or Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
You always meet people who say things like, oh, Europe is so beautiful. I want to retire and move to Spain or whatever. Yeah, but it's not like it's something big like going on in the country. Like most people, by far, most Americans, they're not considering moving to another country.
Right.
But then ask the same question to non-Americans, right? Non-countries outside the United States. You ask them the same question, and you're gonna definitely get a different answer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what do you think too on the college? Because you're a college professor and everything. You were a student for many years and everything, especially later into your life. It sounded like so. Like, what do you see like out of the, I guess, college age kids now? That what are things that you observe, you notice about them?
Oh boy.
Like, I guess in general.
Well, it's just a whole different generation of people, like the Gen Z, right? It's a quite interesting species, so to speak, because the Gen Z people, they have very particular needs and challenges they're dealing with that they were like totally foreign for me when I was growing up. Of course, I grew up in a different country. I grew up in Venezuela, but even I've been in the States for like 30 years now. And 30 years ago in America, I mean, it was different. People were so different back then, and by people I mean young people. For example, I read this book. I think the name of the book is the Coddling of the American Mind.
Is it John Haidt?
Yes,
Yeah,
Jonathan Haidt.
Jonathan Haidt.
And Greg Luciano. I think those two are the authors. And I think it was in this book that I read that there's a 3-year experience gap in kids today compared to kids 30 years ago. And so here's to be more specific. They say that 18-year-olds today have about the same level of lived experiences as kids who were 15 years old 30 years ago.
That's crazy.
And therefore, kids today start like having sex later in life. They start like working later in life, and building credit much later now. Back 30 years ago, when you were 15, and I know this because I saw it, right? When I moved to America, like you would go to a supermarket and people working at the supermarket, there were mostly like 15-year-old kids, right? 15, 16-year-old kids. And many of them have like, they were already paying for a car, for their own car.
Yeah.
So they would work to pay off, their cars, and brand new cars. And so we're talking about kids, 15-year-old, 16-year-old people who already knew how to work, already knew how to follow a schedule, already knew about the struggles typical in a work environment, working with other people. That can be, a challenge sometimes because you work with people with different personalities and different sense of humors, and then there's conflict and all sorts of things. But then you learn to interact with different people at a very early age, like we're talking about 30 years ago. And of course, and then sex it was a natural consequence of that. So kids back then would have engaged in sexual relationships earlier compared to now. Now kids, they finish high school and they're like almost 18, or some of them are 18, and then now they start thinking about, man, maybe I should get a job. And
or they just go straight to college and then they're like, I'll get a job after college.
Right, or they go straight to college, and exactly.
Two totally different environments,
Exactly.
College and the real workforce.
Right, but it's a fact. I'm not making this stuff up. Like, it's a fact that kids today, the Gen Z, they are starting much later in sex to have sexual relationships.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And they're starting much later to work, have a job, and have a schedule. So they are having a hard time. Gosh, I hate to put it this way, but they're having a hard time growing up.
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't want to avoid responsibility because I have a Gen Z daughter, right? Actually, I have two daughters. One is 18, the other one is 15, and I think part of the blame it's on us parents for being so overprotective, maybe, and not exposing our kids to things like that, like just interacting with other people, with strangers, and that sort of thing. So,
Can I ask you, and that spirit of like overprotection and everything, is that, to get deeply psychologically analytical here, is that like, you think, a response to the parenting from the previous generation, like the generation previous to you, like your parents?
right, you know what it can be? This is, my assumption, right? But it's a natural thing. You want the best for your kids. Like you consider your life was difficult, was hard. You want to make life easier for your kids. That's a natural feeling, right? you don't want your kids to struggle or to go through the same struggles that you did, and yet maybe they should.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because those struggles brought you here and made you the person you are, and gave you some skills and taught you some very important lessons. And you're depriving your kids from those lessons by not exposing them, right? By not letting them, just go out, for example, go out by themselves to the and play, pick up whatever, their bike, and just go out in the neighborhood and just ride and meet friends, make friends, and play with friends out there. And right now, most parents are so concerned that something can happen to your kid. You would not, and I hear parents saying this very often. They say, no, what if something happened to my son or my daughter, right? If they're like biking outside and, well, nothing happened to me, right? Nothing happened to you. So, but I think we are to blame in part for Gen Z and for this, and how difficult world is for these kids today.
Right.
Have you ever, are you familiar with the saying, tough men, or hard times, what's this?
Hard times, hard times create weak men create,
hard times.
No, we're going to
Weak
reverse.
men,
Hard
weak-
times. No, I got it. Hard times create strong men.
Yeah.
Strong men create good times. Good times create weak
Weak
men.
men.
Weak men create hard times.
Hard time. So it's a cycle.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. So, but it's scary because where we are right now, it's good times and weak men.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that means that the next stage is, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult.
But do you think we're already kind of in the hard times in a sense?
I
Because
think
like
we've been in the hard times for a little bit.
I mean,
At least maybe like in America, maybe like ever since the financial crisis, maybe.
well, and there's different
2008.
There's different starting points too,
True,
right? You can
true.
either say, oh, it's when Donald Trump got elected, or oh, it's the financial crisis, or it's September 11th,
Yeah.
which ironically we're recording
It's
on
today.
today, 22nd.
Oh, yeah.
What is it, 22nd anniversary today? But so you can almost make arguments that the hard times started at like when we got involved in two different wars, or our
Right.
economy collapsed, or political divisions. So
Well, after 9/11, and you probably know friends who, or people, right, and family members who, after 9/11, they decided to be part of join the army or something,
Right.
or Navy, because it was shocking and they wanted to do something for the country. And I would say that was a good call. That was a good opportunity to grow up, right, and do something for your country. Do something, the right thing. You know what I'm saying? People feel the responsibility to, okay, we cannot just let this happen again. And but like you say, right? The next phase in the cycle, it's something bad. Now, I don't know what you consider bad that you're going through right now. Like, what would you say it's difficult right now?
I mean, I
Your
think
age.
one of the big challenges I think is I think it's a combination of two things right now. So one is the political division in the country.
Oh.
Everybody feels like unnecessarily pitted against against one another, and
Just for the sake of picking a side.
for the sake of picking a side, and and it just, everybody doesn't want to get to know one another. Everybody's kind of closed off. The social isolation.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the second thing is just economic. Like, nobody feels like, they feel like the American dream is kind of out of reach. They feel like they're not going to get married. They don't have the money to support, a family. They can't buy a house.
Wow.
The career opportunities, at least they feel like, aren't there. So I'd say, I mean, Doc, would you add anything to that? Or?
I think part of it too is like a lot of our society now is based off of the internet, obviously. And so I think with the internet came a lot of change. And then with that change, there was a lot of mixed reactions that came out of it. I mean, the day the internet, the World Wide Web came alive, more information got posted and was available to the whole human race than the entirety of civilization before that in one day.
Oh, yeah.
And then it doubled the next year, and then it doubled the next, right? So it's just crazy.
And what kind of problem do you think that created?
Well, I think that combined with maybe internet sites like social media and all that, and news websites all being online, and then everybody sourcing everything from online. And then it's kind of like they extend themselves to just draw from this device, almost like it's their life source.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
You're right. I see your point now, because there's like the whole world is available to you
Right.
in your phone. Like you can learn anything.
Yeah.
And you can be anywhere, so to speak, right? You can see what's going on in any part of the world, and you can connect with people in that part of the world. I mean, I see what you're saying. The amount of information is just overwhelming, and that can be a problem. In social media, that's the other thing I would say, because you mentioned two things, right? You feel like, or people in your generation feels like there's no American dream. The American dream is not accessible for you guys anymore, and then the socialization aspect of today's generation, how difficult it is for them to socialize, and I see that's a problem. And I have a funny anecdote, though. I hope you don't think I'm anything wrong with
Shoot
me.
from the hip, man. Don't worry. Yeah.
But okay, let me put it this way. It was an experiment that I was conducting, right? In my head, I was at a Starbucks, and I ordered a drink, and I was waiting for my drink, right? And I was there, standing next to 4 or 5 young people, most of them females, and I noticed that everybody was like looking at their phones, like their eyes were like glued to their phones, and I was the only one just standing with my arms crossed and just looking around, and my eye, for some reason, I started looking at one of these people waiting for their drink, right?
think you told me this.
One of these girls. She was about, I would say she was about 22, 23, so it wasn't like a minor or anything like that.
Right.
But I just said to myself, I'm going to see what happens here. I'm just going to stare at her and see. But I'm not going to give her like a crazy, pervert look or anything. Just a look. Just a look. Like I'm just going to look at her, and I'm just waiting for my drink, and I'm looking at her. And when she notices my stare, my eyes, oh gosh, she became extremely uncomfortable, and and she started like shaking, and she was just looking around, and I noticed that she started like breathing heavily, and we're like 8 feet apart or maybe more, so we're not even near.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my, this girl, she's gonna have a heart attack if I don't stop staring at her. And how difficult it is now for somebody, right, for Gen Z, to just look at someone in their eyes. It's difficult.
Or even just like look up, they're uncomfortable and question you, and like, why are you looking at me?
But
Yeah.
okay, but
I give
that
you the out on
was
that. I guess.
that was 30 years ago, right? And
You think 30 years ago somebody would be like, "What the hell are you looking
exactly.
It's like, you got a problem?
Do I know you? Do I owe you money? What were you looking at?
Yeah, she doesn't even want to interact.
Right. That would have been the natural reaction of a same girl, 22, 23-year-old girl,
Yeah.
30, maybe 20 years ago. But now,
She just crumbled under the pressure.
oh yeah, man, it's just too much to handle. Like somebody actually looking at you in person. Anyways, it was an experiment, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's just very challenging for kids now. That aspect of socialization, and it is a problem. And something, I think something's got to be done about it. And at least, we're actually having a conversation about it. And I think maybe that's a good place to start, right? Making a difference and bringing awareness to this issue. That, we cannot be so afraid of human contact, right? Not too long ago, I was in a restaurant with my 18-year-old. She was like 17. And she said, Dad, can you tell the waiter to, get some napkins? And I said, you need a napkin? She said, yeah. Well, you ask for your napkin. So, but then, Dad, please, really? Yeah, really? Ask for your napkin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Waiter looks like a nice man. But again, I get it. I get it and I don't get it. But that's what we got to do. We got to be aware of this. This is an issue. And we got to do something about it. We got to expose our kids. I'm talking now, I say we. I'm talking like as a parent, right?
Yeah.
But you guys don't have kids yet.
But I think what you're saying is like culturally, like we need to like get to a point where like we are actually preparing our kids for the real world. Because in a big way, I don't see a lot of that. Like, I see a lot of like basically like people become forever children. They're staying with their parents like well into the 20s. Hell, I'm guilty of it. But but yeah, like I see a lot of people that they just don't understand like why to take responsibility. Because I mean, if you don't have a reason to, like if it's not out of necessity, you essentially won't do it. If you don't have a reason to be responsible.
And that's the thing. There's no need now. You mentioned necessity. There's no need to interact with people with all these apps, right? You can order your Starbucks through your Starbucks app.
Right.
And you just go get into the Starbucks and you pick up your drink and you go. And you don't say good morning. You don't say thank you. You just grab your drink and go. So that's good.
Like you would just go to a coffee shop and it was like no internet, no nothing. You would walk in and be like, hey, good morning, how are you? And
right.
This guy has worked there for like 20 years. And it's like, hey, George, what's going on? How was your morning? How was your weekend? Right. And they just worked there, but you had this interaction.
You would make friends. You would probably meet somebody you would be interested in dating and there'll be that interaction. But now there's very little of that. And now the other thing you mentioned, Ken, is the issue of the American dream. And here's the good news, though. The American dream it's alive and well, my friend, and it's a reality. I see it. There's so many opportunities in this country. It's unbelievable. This country still is the land of opportunities. But what has changed is that people don't think so. People don't see it. And I think and that's an ideological problem.
Yeah.
And again, it's probably a problem that relates to things like, systemic racism. Oh, I cannot move on. I cannot, succeed because, the system is rigged against me. No, there's no system rigged against you. I mean, the system is not going to give you anything for free. You got to fight for it and work for it. Like in my case, when I was an immigrant, and as most or every immigrant, it's the same thing. It's a struggle. So you just got to face it and work hard for it and for what you want. So, but I see what you're saying, and because I sort of get the same impression from my students. They don't have a lot of hope, and that is a problem.
Yeah.
And there is hope. We just got to convince them that there is hope, that they can make a difference. They can succeed in this country. They have opportunities.
It's insane the amount of opportunities they have. It's just like it really is just I think people get stuck in like systems, right? Like, they go to school, they're told everything to do. They have to raise their hand to, go to the bathroom and everything. And then they go to work, they go to a job and everything, okay, go in at 9, they got to be back at 5. So people get caught in these systems, right? And then they can never kind of think, what life is like outside of them. And if they see somebody living outside of that, regular 9 to 5 type thing and everything, not that there's anything wrong with a regular 9 to 5, but if they see other people outside of that, there's plenty of opportunities out there, but they kind of make an excuse, okay, like, here's why I can't do that, here's why I can't do this. But it's just like, people have been overcoming much more severe odds for thousands of years.
Oh yeah. Oh man, totally.
Crazy odds, dude.
Yeah.
The
thing is, life has become so easy now. Technology has made life a lot easier, like compared to 20 years ago, and that's a good thing. I mean, we want our lives to be easy, right? But there's still challenges, right? And there's still interactions with people. We still need other people. We have to interact with people. And so, I don't know. I mean, it's probably it's the paradox of progress, right? Okay, the easier your life gets, the harder for you is going to be to thrive spiritually or intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
The more difficult it's going to be for you to grow.
Oh, I think this is a
And
great segue.
and again, the whole Genesis generation, that's their struggle. Their
Right.
struggle is with growing up.
Yeah.
So that actually, I want to segue into something because that clicks so well with it. So you've been teaching philosophy for how many years?
It's going to 7 years pretty soon.
7 years. And your main philosophical realm that you just love is existentialism, right?
That is correct.
And
yes.
so what you were just talking about is like an idea of existentialism, right? Is that we don't have experiences in order to meld our lives right now. Like Gen Z doesn't have enough life experience to even meld anything from. There's just
Yeah.
a lack of it, right? So, what do you
And
think
the
about that?
issue of meaning,
Right.
of meaning in life, because that's a big existentialist theme, right? The whole question of whether there's purpose, there's meaning in life, and of course people in the existentialist camp we would say yes, of course there is meaning in life, but it comes with responsibility,
Right.
You adopt responsibility, you're going to find meaning. But what does that mean exactly? Adopting responsibility. What does that mean? It means do something for someone. Commit to do something for someone, something positive. And you're going to see how you're going to, if you have this attitude towards responsibility, your whole life is going to change. And that's a problem now. Kids, they're not, they don't want to, they fear, assuming taking responsibilities. Because it doesn't sound really appealing to say, find something to do, right? And have some responsibility. And, why? I'd rather stay in my room, play video games. It's more fun. Yeah, but in the long run, it's not going to help you. You're going to see that you're going to need other people. You're going to need to find a place, right, in the world, in society. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be happy. You're going to feel like there's always something important missing in your life, regardless of how prosperous you might be, regardless of how much money you might have, right? And you're going to feel like there's something missing. And I mean, the studies have been done about this, man. If your life, and I teach this in my philosophy class, right? If your life is not affecting someone else's life in a positive way, there's always going to be something missing in your life. And because that's where the good stuff is. That's the good stuff. And it seems almost crazy to say, yeah, the good stuff it's in investing my time and giving up some of my time and my comfort and my free time to just get involved in helping other people. Yes, that's a good thing, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you got to see it. You got to experience it. And for people who are probably listening and finding themselves in that spot where they're like, they don't find a whole lot of meaning and they don't find joy in life, I would tell them, do something for someone. There's food pantries out there. There's way too many different opportunities for you to get involved in helping your community in some capacity, tutoring kids, painting someone's house, raking someone's leaves. Like I remember a few years ago when I was a high school teacher, we would take a week to work and serve our community, right? And one of the things that we did, because this was during the fall, we visited homes of people who are retired, pretty old people, right? And they had like a big backyard, front yard, and it was just full of dry leaves, right? And it's just difficult for these people to, rake all those leaves, and it's a lot of work, especially if they have like a big property, right? And so we would go to these homes and we would help these people, raking their leaves, and we would clear their backyards, front yards, and man, they were so happy, and looking at their faces, they were just so grateful that we were there, that we made their lives easier. But you see, that's the funny thing about responsibility. I have to give up my free time to make someone's life easier. So I have to make my life less easy, more complicated to help to make someone's life easier. So it's kind of silly if you put it that way, if you see it that way, right? Because common sense would be, why? Let me I have some free time, let me just do my own thing, right? Let me just read or whatever, watch videos on YouTube, TikTok, whatever. But then you're going to find sooner or later, you're going to find there's something important missing in your life. You just got to make a difference in someone's life. And because when you do, you're going to experience a different joy. It's something that you will never get from social media or technology.
Yeah, I think that's the human experience, right? Like, it's foundational.
Because we're humans,
right? It's foundational to the human experience is to develop relationships with each other and everything.
And how human is a device? Is a computer, a phone.
Yeah.
You see videos of human people doing insane things, but there's no human interaction there.
Right.
You're not really interacting with anyone.
And soon it'll be, it won't be human because, all this AI stuff coming out, it'll just be not a human person, but it simulates perfectly.
So I actually have something to put. I've said this about drugs, right? The reason people go to drugs is because they mimic feelings that are, I guess, induced by having a good life. And what do I mean by that? People do coke, they want energy. People want alcohol, they want to feel like a kid again. You know what I'm saying? People want heroin. A lot of people, describe, doing heroin as it feels like they're just getting a big hug and everything. And it's just to me, all these things in our lives that we go to, these little addictions we have, whether it be sugar, drugs, except for some people pornography and just internet addiction.
Oh man, you can get your dopamine from many different ways.
But every single bit of it is mimicking something that's actually out there in the world for you to get. You know what I'm saying? You look at a lot of people that do heroin and everything. What's missing from their life? Love a lot of the time. So it's and they go to that because it's the thing that's most similar to love without actually having to go through the pain that's associated with it and everything. So that's why, and I think that's what a lot of people do with social media is. It's mimicking real world interaction. It's mimicking the joy of real world interaction and everything. But it's at the end of the day, the heroin kills you, the alcohol kills you and everything. And this, who knows,
So that's a thought. So how about instead of, feeling inspired watching let's say a romantic movie, let's say you feel romantic, you feel lonely, you watch this movie and it's a beautiful love story and makes you, just dream about, and think about, that'll be great. If we can, like you're mentioning mimicking, right? We get a satisfaction just by looking at this story, any story it might be. I use the example of a love story. Well, how about you be the star of your own love story / adventure? How way better and more exciting is that? Yeah. But it just takes someone to risk. Risk. Okay, I'm gonna meet someone. I'm gonna start, and it starts with talking, right? With meeting the person, and then you meet someone you find interesting or good looking or whatever, and then the first challenge begins, gentlemen. I have to say something, and you're like, and you practice and you rehearse in your mind, what am I gonna say? And you want to approach the girl, maybe the girl, she's a classmate, whatever, she works in the store, but then the struggle begins, and who wants to deal with that? I'd just rather watch another romantic movie, and it just makes my life easier. Dude, it's much better to be in the movie. It's much better to be the star, right, of your own romantic or adventure. But then you got to consider all the struggles you're going to have to face. And you have to be willing to face them and with the faith that you're going to overcome and you're going to proceed to the next challenge. Because, okay, once you have the first challenge, okay, I said hi, and she said hi back. Well, the next challenge is next time I see her, I'm going to say, hey, how was your day?
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And let's say, okay, that goes really well. And, you had a conversation with the girl you like. Well, then the next challenge is, I'm going to ask her out. So it's a series of, let's say, stressful situations.
Right.
Because everything is stressful now for Gen Z people, right? Everything is stressful. Like somebody looking at you at a Starbucks, that's extremely stressful, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's it. That's what it takes to enjoy life, man.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to put yourself out there. You got to face those challenges. You got to start being willing to start the conversation and then continue the conversation. Well, and what if the conversation goes really wrong? What if the person is not interested in you? Well, yeah, go back to watch your movies in Netflix or try again.
Yep.
Yeah. You're stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea, right? The devil is all the fear that, is associated with, approaching, whether it be a woman or even just a situation you want to find yourself in and everything. And the deep blue sea is just like, okay, going back home, drowning and everything and not taking the risk.
Okay, so friends, here's a thought. Here's a big thought. People are afraid now more than ever. Not even afraid, they're terrified at life.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're terrified. And life is just so beautiful. It has so many beautiful, amazing opportunities to give you. But people are so worried and so stressed about, what if this goes wrong? What if this, if I'm rejected? Or what if I don't get the position? Just keep going. That's okay. It's okay. Life is difficult. Keep going. Don't be so afraid of life, man.
The hurt is part of it.
Well, I wanted to marry. I was ready to marry. I was happy living on my own. I was married before, and I was divorced for about 6 years. And then I met someone, and I thought to myself, she's perfect. It wasn't love at first sight. It was love at first date. Okay? So of course I liked her when I met her, but then when I asked her out and we had a first date, I realized I could just listen to this woman speaking all day. But there was a problem. She was here on a tourist visa and she was scheduled to leave the country in just a few days. And I thought she was the woman that I wanted. I was looking for. How ironic, right? No, but she has a ticket to leave the country. And I spent a whole night assessing in my mind, right, what I was going to do. And I said to myself, heck with it. I'm going to ask this girl to marry me. I'm going to say, you know what? You want to live, you want to hear something crazy? You want to live a crazy, crazy adventure? Marry me. And this woman, who I'm happily married to, her reaction was beautiful, man. It was just beautiful. When I said, marry me, don't go, you know what she did? She grabbed her head this way. And she was like, no, you are crazy. That was her reaction. It wasn't like,
Which is exactly what you want to hear, right?
I wasn't expecting it, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I said, yes, I want to marry you. I'm serious. She said, no, you're crazy. No, I'm not. Well, I am crazy, but I'm serious. I want to marry you, and I don't want to let you go. What are you going to do with your life? Like, you're going to go to another country, and then, because her plan was to start off basically in another country in Spain and from zero. And I said, okay, you really want to do that? You've been doing that for the past like six years, and don't you want to settle? Don't you want to have a family? Don't you want to have kids? And here's your chance. Let's get married and let's see what happens. Now, why I'm using this example? Because things can go wrong. Yes, they can. But then life's an adventure. What if it goes really well? Because that's the alternative.
People don't ask that question.
It can go wrong.
People don't ask that question.
Exactly. But what if it goes well?
Yeah.
What if it goes well? And so far, my friends, I'm the happiest man in the planet, because I'm absolutely in love with my wife, and I'm so happy that I made that decision, that I asked her to marry me. So, but again, I'm not advocating for people to just go out and ask anyone to marry them. But why not? Maybe that's what people need, right?
We're
adventure.
To anybody watching, she is in studio with us. She's sitting over here laughing in the corner at the.
No, but honestly, okay, that was a radical example. But how about something less radical, but still exciting? That girl who's in your class, right? She's your classmate. Or that girl that works in Starbucks or the bookstore, whatever. You like her. She looks special. Gosh, say something to her. What's the worst that can happen?
Yep.
She's gonna say, no, I'm not interested. She might look at you like, give you a nasty look. Okay, that's fine. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. But what if it goes well?
Right.
Then there you go. That's gonna be the beginning of an adventure. And boys, life is beautiful, and life offers plenty of opportunities for you to live a good, happy, adventurous, meaningful life.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Wow, I think that's a great piece.
I was thinking that, or like in the last couple of minutes, I was like, that's probably a good.
That's a great example.
That's a great endpoint. I don't think we can get much better than that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Molina.
Yeah.
you're
Seriously.
welcome. No, thank you guys for inviting me, and this was fun. And
This was awesome.
so,
I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
if
This.
you want to do it again, anytime.
yeah.
I'm available.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Yeah. I definitely, because I mean, we're gonna have.
So let me just ask you one question before
What?
we stop. Is there such a girl in your minds right now? Is there someone?
I guess.
I mean, if there's not nobody, that's okay.
There's not, and that is something I've questioned, myself on everything like that. Like, am I being too picky? Am I not like, approaching girls because I'm being too picky, or
Or maybe you have other priorities.
I have other, and that's a lot of it for me, like, because I am trying to build a lot of stuff right now. I'm working with the community, doing, trying to get this, off its feet and everything. So,
But my question is, because I'm just wondering if there's a giant in your life right now that you're really scared of facing, and maybe you got to face.
yeah. The girl thing, honestly, I think would be. It's just like, to me, it's one of these things where I'm trying to figure out, like, if I should wait for like the right girl to
Okay.
come along, or if it's just, hey, see that chick right there, start something, see what
Right.
happens and everything. But I'm trying to balance that too. Is
Right.
like, should I wait for that right moment? Like, will it kind of arrange itself? If I do the right things, if I put myself in the right situations, will it arrange itself, or do I need to go start basically cold calling girls and just like
Right.
go to chicks, hey, how you doing,
No, of course, no. But I mean, I asked.
Well,
because-
what's your advice on that?
Well, first I wanted to ask Doc. Doc,
Yeah,
is there someone like?
Not really.
What about giants? Something that you're afraid of confronting, and you're like, it's something that you like to pursue, but you feel like a little anxious about, or is there something you're
I would say, thankfully, probably not.
okay? That's
Yeah,
good.
like I think the way I'm going right now is pretty good. Like I got 2 jobs. One I work, and they make up a full time
Mhm.
for me, and so that's good. But I'm working on school at the same time, and trying to get this off the ground. So
Mhm.
the girl thing for me, it's more or less I'm just not focused on that because that's
Mhm.
not a priority for me. And everybody's gonna have different priorities, right?
Of course.
So that's
Yes.
just not one of mine.
Yeah, well, I used the girl example, so it was just an example, but it can be so many things,
And
right?
it can often be the hardest thing for some guys to
Oh,
do.
yeah, often is.
Like some guys, and all guys are jealous of this type of guy who can just, gay girls.
Yeah, just no problem.
Like,
yeah.
no problem.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a real effort for some people. And then,
Yeah.
but I think the cool thing that you mentioned is just maybe trying to find those situations where, I know Ken likes to bring this up, but just try to find stuff that's difficult.
Mhm.
Try to find something that's difficult, and if you can get strong enough to row against the current, and you push past it, I think the stronger you become at the end of the stream is so worth it.
Well, okay. So here's I think you asked me something about something I wanted or something that was a struggle for me. Getting a full-time job teaching philosophy. You guys, I think I've told you this story before, but that has been my dream for many years. Doing this for a living. Teaching philosophy, and I was an adjunct. I was an adjunct for about 4 or 5 years at CPCC. I was finally offered a full-time position just recently, just a few months ago. But it was something that I was pursuing. But the way I was pursuing it was very, how can I say, very intentional, and I was focused. Let me give you an example. I had the job interview because CPCC for the past 2 years they had an opening for a full-time philosophy professor, and I applied those 2 times, and I wasn't accepted. They didn't offer me the position, and then the 3rd time they did. So first interview, you're nervous. I mean, it's your dream. This is your adventure, and okay, the interview and the whole thing was not great, but I was paying attention. I was taking notes, and I'm like, okay. And then I talked to my supervisor, and I said, after they hire someone else, I said, hey, listen, what can I do better? The person that was hired, what did he do that I didn't do? What did he bring that I didn't bring? And, he did this and that. I would take notes. So I applied the 2nd time. The following year, another position opened, and I applied, and again I wasn't accepted. And that was a hard pill to swallow. Like the 2nd time was really hard to swallow. But then I said to myself, okay, I need to keep trying. I need to see what went wrong, what was missing. So I had the same conversation again with my supervisor and his supervisor, and I gathered more information, and I let these people know, this supervisor, that I was determined. And I remember telling my students, you were probably there. I said, I'm gonna do this for a living. I'm gonna be a full-time philosophy professor. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. Because I knew that I was getting good at the whole interview process. And I was gathering every opportunity that I failed, in quotes, it taught me a lesson. And so I was better prepared the next time. And then I was much better prepared the 3rd time when they finally gave me the position. So what I'm trying to say is, find something you would love to pursue, like whatever it is. I used the example of a girl that you might want to meet or date, but it can be anything. anything that you think is great that you would like to have, okay, set it in front of you and then evaluate what's going to take you, how much work it's going to take you to get that, to get there, to accomplish your dream. You gotta do that and then consider all the sacrifices that you're gonna have to make to achieve that goal, because you're gonna have to make sacrifices, and you're gonna have challenges, and you're gonna have stressful situations, and you have to be willing to face them, and you have to get prepare yourself to be ready for the challenge. And if you fail, keep going, learn from that failure, and then keep going and keep going and keep going. And I'm telling you, you will get what you're pursuing. But it's up to you. It's how you face it. It's how you face your dreams and the challenges that they're in the process of achieving your dream. Does that make sense?
It makes
does.
absolute sense.
Great advice.
Preaching to the
Love
choir, man.
Love
Yeah.
that.
So
Yeah.
Well,
Hell,
thank you.
yeah, hell yeah, dude.
That
That was
was-
awesome.
that was awesome.
great.
I
That
don't
was
know.
great. Yeah. Yeah, I have nothing else to add, man.
Yeah.
That was the
I think-
perfect.
So invisible friends, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you to everyone who listened and everything, and thank you seriously for coming by. I mean, this was great. Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
was really great. Cool, guys. Yeah.